Hi YouTube, this is Nick Jamel again here talking to you about the conversation of our generation and just ideas and things that I come across in my life. And you know, I think recently it's been a lot about politics and philosophy, and I got one more of those, and I think I'm going to try to get back into more just art type things in the next week or so, and really try to delve into something there and just talk about something a little bit lighter. But today I did want to talk about um, an idea that's, I think, a little bit misunderstood, and give my point of view on how I think it's applied, and then hopefully people can kind of correct and tell me basically where I'm a little bit misguided in uh, my thinking and my logic on it. So, but first, before I even say, I just want to ask guys for your support. That if you like what I'm doing, subscribe. If you think that you got something to add, comment. If you add to the conversation. This is a dialogue. This is supposed to be not just me talking into a camera, but for people to come in and chime in and really bring to the table new ideas and new ways of looking at things for me. And then lastly, like the video and share it with people. Let people see what it is that I'm doing. If you are on board with it, tweet it out, put it on Facebook, all that stuff, because that's going to help me bring people into the conversation, and that's really what I'm trying to do. So today my topic is going to be power, force, and authority, and how they work together. And so this is kind of going to be a little bit of a discussion on how they work together, and then how it's applied in our interactions within the legal system a lot of times, and then how you can apply these concepts outside the legal system, and maybe come to better solutions in that regard. So I guess we need to kind of define terms first, and the way I define them at least. So power or force is basically your ability to impose your will on someone else, right? So a parent is able to force their child to do something. They have strength over them. They're a stronger person. They can physically make them do something, pretty much. I mean, they can, if you're a little kid, your parents can grab your hands and shovel food into your mouth for you, technically speaking. Power is how much force you're able to exert. So this is in the physical sense, if you're a stronger person, but also in the legal sense and in the legal world, it's, are you able to make people do things, so even, are you able to kind of override the law system? So the fact that, we'll get into this real fast, the federal government's ability to make states do things is their power. They can threaten, and they can use legal avenues to impose their will, right? Whether or not those legal avenues are constitutional, or whether or not those legal avenues really make sense, is up to authority. And authority is when you're granted the ability to utilize power. And so that could be, in a lawful sense. It could be in a sense of like, my boss has authority over me because I have said I'm willing to work for you. I've consented to this contract, and so now my boss or my company has authority over my actions somewhat. Not fully. I mean, they can't necessarily tell me what. I mean, unless I consent to it. Unless I sign a clause that says I won't post something on social media, then they can't tell me what to do there necessarily. But I can feel the repercussions of stuff if I misrepresent them on social media, right? So they have authority over me by living in this country. The United States government, your state, your city has authority over you based on the idea of social contract, and somewhat. I mean, it's a little bit now it's kind of like once you're born here, you're kind of a part of the law system instead of the social contract that was originally set up in our Constitution. Those people did, when we founded our country, those people gave authority to the government by signing on to it, and so that's where this comes from, and that's why people who see the federal government as illegitimate, that they don't see it as authority. They see it as, misusing its power and exerting force illegitimately. And so that's kind of those are the kind of the terms, the basics, and how they work together. So, authority is the right to utilize power. Power is how much force you can exert, and force is, bending someone to your will, basically, by, by making them do it, holding a gun to their head and telling them to do something, physically grabbing someone and making them do it for themselves. That's force. And it could also be coercion, whatever you want to consider it. There's different levels of force, but, that's the basic. And so, the way this is applied in our system, I think that's important, is the difference between the separation of powers and the separation of the state and the federal government. Those two are, I think, the biggest struggle that we see in our legal system as far as authority and power. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. So my issue that I see is that the states have, in my opinion, in the Constitution, more authority than the federal government over the writing of laws, over regulating and everything, and all the way down to the community has more, the county has more authority than the state, honestly, because it's most local. It's the most basically democratic way to make sure things happen, because you are governing yourself rather than being governed by external forces. And so that's where the real issue comes in for me. The federal government usurping this power is done by multiple avenues. Number one, they can write laws that overreach their power, and because they do have, or that overreach, their authority, that are, the things that are enumerated in the Constitution that they're allowed to do, they're able to go out, write laws outside that. They have the power technically to write a law. And then they're supposed to have checks in there that say that law oversteps your authority. You may have the power to do that, but you do not have the authority to do that. And that's where, the courts and the president are supposed to say to the legislature that you can't do that. That's where, when the president signs an executive order that he's not authorized to do, so he has the power to do it. Yeah, he has the power to write executive orders. That's in his right, or that's in his power, but, the ones that they write a lot of times are not in their authority because they're doing something that is Congress's job. They're writing a law. They're not, saying that Congress wrote a law and now they said that they're going to, build a new post office, and and then they go and they're like, well, what do we want to build it out of? And the president's like, well, just build it out of brick. That's the executive order. That's what it's supposed to be. Congress says this is going to be a national park. We need someone to oversee this, and they didn't write that into the bill. The president says, here, I'll appoint somebody. That's the exact, he's making the laws work. The president has the authority to do little things to facilitate, the execution of laws. That's his authority. But he usurps that power in executive orders by granting amnesty to, 20 million or 12 million people by, postponing the effective date of a law that's written into law. That's usurping authority. He has the power to do these things technically because he did if you have the power to do it, and if you do it, you have the power to do it, basically, because power just means, can I push this through? And so the authority is the problem there, and the federal government is time and time again taking that away from states, and they've been doing it for years. For decades, since Woodrow Wilson especially. They've been centralizing power, and they've been using their power to establish more authority, basically. But it's a false authority because it's not given to them. They've the setup of the Federal Reserve, it was them usurping power over the economy, and so now we just assume that that's their role, to regulate how much money is in our system and all this stuff. That's not in their, that's not one of their tasks. built into the Constitution. That's not what I mean, they're supposed to regulate interstate commerce theoretically, but it's really like make sure that states aren't bickering over their own tariffs against each other. That's what the point was on that. It's not to say we're going to control the economy from Washington D.C. That's not the point. And the courts have helped them in usurping authority by expanding the meaning of what these things are in the Constitution. And so the problem with that is you can interpret it however you want theoretically. Things mean what they mean, but you can interpret it however you want if you use some rhetoric and some fancy language and words that people don't understand and falsify uses of legal terms in order to push your ideas on people. And that's what's happening there in the courts to back up these sort of things. And instead of saying, here's what it says, here's the rule, no, it's like you read into the Ten Commandments, you can say, thou shalt not murder is one of them, right? You shall not murder. It's not you shall not kill. That's not actually one of the commandments. So now that's pretty cut and dry, but I guess you could interpret it, a judge could always say, but in this case it's not murder because murder is this definition, and by, the facts of the case, it's not murder to, kill someone who it's vengeance instead, blah blah blah, or something. They do these sorts of workarounds of just black and white laws, and thou shalt not covet your neighbor's goods. That doesn't mean that you don't want something that your neighbor has. That's not the point. It's that covetry is much deeper than want. It's a consuming want of someone else. So covetry means I'm willing to kill my neighbor for his car that I like. That's what covetry is really. So when they say, well, you can't want that, that makes you a bad person, and that's how they misinterpret these things. And so they change the meaning of words in order to grant the authority. And that's how they use their power at the federal level. Sorry, talking a lot. The thing that's really frustrating me is the fact that the states have the power to take it back. They can use avenues. There's legal avenues for them to do it. And there's also, the biggest one is that the 10th Amendment Center will say is your biggest power as a state is to not comply. So then you have to force the federal government to try to exert power over you. And when that happens, since you're technically a federal system, says that you're on an equal level. So the federal government and states are not, it's not federal over state, and it's not state over federal. They're even. The federal government is supposed to be a neutral mediator between the workings of the states. It's not supposed to be an overarching government as much as, a consensual congregation of the states coming together and representatives of the states, and the Senate should be theoretically appointed by the states. That's what the Constitution says. They've changed it since they've amended the Constitution because they wanted, I guess, senators to have to run every 6 years instead of representing their state legislature, which would be beneficial, and they would be pulling power back to the state that way. That was, they had the authority and the power to represent their state rather than being voted on every 6 years and having to take money from special interests in order to keep their Senate seat and serve for life like some people. That's the problem there too. And so states need to stand up against it. And I think, honestly, one of the funniest things in the world is, I'm a libertarian, and I think that, the most hilarious thing is now with the sanctuary city thing, it's a win-win in my opinion, whoever wins out, because, I'm not huge on immigration. I think definitely that, you can streamline our system and get people in here easily instead of making them have to do it illegally, because there's really not another good choice at this point in time. But for people who are here illegally and who are committing crimes, you shouldn't protect those people, in my opinion. There are people who are, um, you know, there is. Not only I'm a libertarian in the sense that I want, all this bullshit to go away, but I'm also a pragmatist in the sense that I understand that if we have a law code, you have to navigate the law code in order to get to your end. So if you're going to have these laws, you need to follow them, because if you stop following and executing laws, then that's bad, And I want to get rid of a lot of the laws that are oppressive, and roll those back. But as long as they're in place, I think it undermines what you're trying to do, to create a sense of community and a sense of security, and an organizing society in some sort of manner. I think I'm not someone who doesn't want organization. I don't want like chaos. I just want people to organize themselves at a lower level and build up from there, basically. And I think sanctuary cities are the best thing, because either states' rights wins out. I'm all for that. Hell, even cities' rights, cities' ability to say no to their state. If that wins, hell, that's awesome. That means that here in Indianapolis, we can say, F Obamacare, I'm going to get rid of it, and we're going to have our own exchange. Or we're going to say anyone can compete in Indianapolis for health insurance. I'll tell you what, I'd be paying a tenth. Well, it'd be, I work for the company, so it's not the same, but people who are self-employed would be paying a tenth of what they are now. And that would be beautiful. Or people who broke our laws once by coming into our country illegally, technically, just saying, and then who then went on to break laws again once here. They are tried and actually given due processing, either kicked out of the country, thrown in jail, whatever it is, because if you break laws, if you hurt people, you deserve to pay the price. I mean, whatever that is, whatever that's fair and just, that's what you deserve. And that's not as much for an illegal immigrant gets rolls through a stop sign and then gets deported. No, but the case in, I forget where it is. It was over on the East Coast, I think like Connecticut or whatever, where 2 illegal immigrants were freshmen in high school. They were like 17 and 18 years old, and they raped a 13-year-old, 14-year-old girl. Those guys deserve to be thrown out of the country and never come back. I mean, that's true. I mean, they don't deserve any sort of second chance. That's a horrifying crime. And so, but it's a win-win. Either we're kicking out bad people and creating a sense of order somewhat, or cities and states are usurping back their authority and their power from the government. And that's an insurrection. That's taking back power and giving it to the people who actually should have the power, which is us. I mean, the point of an insurrection is that you don't change the government. Like a revolution changes who's in power. An insurrection is a dispersion of power. It's taking power back and dispersing it among the rightful owners of power, which is the people. It's our vote that should be determining what happens, not special interest groups. It should be our state legislatures being represented by senators that they appoint, protecting our state's interests, because each state is, like I said multiple times on this, each state is completely different and they can't be governed the same way. And so when the federal government usurps that power or that authority by utilizing their power, they in effect undermine what the state is meant to be. And then the biggest thing I think it's not in the law code part of this, is in the private sector. I think that there's a huge opportunity for people to take back power there. And By that I mean not like a revolt or whatever. It's just simply organizing among your community to take care of the needs that need to be taken care of. The number one is that news story out of Canada. I think it was in Toronto, where the city had, they had that big garden area, and basically what happened was people were sliding down this hill and they didn't have a way to get in safely. It was an older community around it for the most part, and so they wanted to build stairs, and the city said it was going to take $65,000 to $150,000 to make 8 stairs, and some guy asked for money, got together $550, hired a homeless man, built 8 stairs that worked, at least for the time being. People critiqued it. They were wood stairs. I mean, whatever, but it would have lasted until, they eventually would have probably not been safe again. The wood will rot, it would get slippery, but it's not hard to make a wood stair not slippery anymore. All you got to do is put some sort of grip. I mean, you probably could have gone to Lowe's. I know that there's adhesive things that like you see all the time on like escalators and stuff like that. It's like that sandpaper on top, and it just kind of is a grip, so that when you get off the escalator, you don't slide off. Where the metal part is, you can get that and put it on the stairs, and that's probably not even $30, I'm sure. I don't know, but it's cheap. And he took into his own hand. He had the power because he had the ability to do that, to go build stairs in his community. But the city said he's not authorized to do so. He didn't have the authority, and so they tore him out, which pissed off a lot of people because people were trying to get back into the garden and sliding down the hill again, and then said, well, we'll build them for $10,000. That way they're up to code, because if you're going to build these things, they have to be up to code. And it's like, well, do you have the right to say, I guess in a public place they might have the authority to regulate the stairs, but and I guess he would be held liable if something did happen on those stairs, technically speaking. So it's probably maybe okay for him, but they could have gone in and utilized his his stairs. But the point is that I was trying to make is that people can usurp that authority. People can find ways to take authority back from the government and take care of ourselves. And I think if you look at just right now, with cryptocurrency and with permaculture and all these things, that is people's ability. That's people going out and taking authority back for their own lives. They're taking responsibility, and they're able to. With technology now, you can pretty much, on a decent middle class wage over time, over a decade maybe, create a self-sustaining household. And that's kind of my goal going forward over the next decade, is to save up money and to work on that bit by bit until I am, because then I have authority over my own life. Not only do I have the power theoretically to do what I want, I have the authority and I have the ability to execute the things that I want to do in my own personal life. And so that's what I think in the private sector we can start working towards, is using our power to usurp authority back as an insurrection. And that's what I hope we do going forward. So I hope you guys enjoy this video, and if you do, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like the video. And if you want to join in on the conversation of our generation and get the dialogue going, let's get some comments going, start sharing this with people and talking about these things and coming back with feedback or new ideas, and let's make this a dialogue. Let's make this an actual conversation. All right, so have a good day, guys, and be safe.